Hello, welcome back. And if you're new to this channel, welcome. This is Top 5 Tuesday. And so for this week's Tracey's Top 5, I'm going to share with you 5 of my favorite books that I've read and which also helped me on my personal journey of self-transformation. So I want to share these books with you today in case you are on a similar journey and are looking for some reading material and something to help you along the way. So let's get going with this week's Tracey's Top 5 Favorite Books for Self-Transformation. Book number 1 on the list of top 5 books is The Secret. Now, this book was a part of my transformation at the very beginning. I read The Secret and it actually just kind of expanded my mind in such a way that it made me feel like there was so much more to learn at the time. Now, personally, if I was to go back and read this book right now, it does seem a little elementary to me now. But it was a great book to get me started on the journey of my own soul growth and spiritual development. So if you have never read this book, The Secret, I highly recommend it. It is a great book for those starting on the spiritual path, who are beginning to kind of become in touch with your emotions. It helps you to understand that thought is cause, and all those great things. So this is just a great primer to get you started in transformation. So let's move on to number 2. Book number 2 on my top 5 favorite books for self-transformation is The 4 Agreements. This is a great book. This book is all about the author, Don Miguel Ruiz. Anyway, it's his experience with the Toltec wisdom. I hope that I am pronouncing that correctly. It's Toltec wisdom. So the Toltecs are basically wise people of Central America who passed their wisdom on to the next generation, and the next generation, and so on. But basically, they're like shamans, healers, those kind of people. And the 4 Agreements is all about how we are domesticated while we're being raised. We're domesticated by our parents and our teachers and all of our authority figures, and basically popular culture and all that. And during this domestication, we build all of these beliefs in our mind, whether or not we truly as a soul agree with them. So what this book is teaching you are 4 new agreements to make with yourself that can break the bonds of any of the old agreements that you may disagree with. And it's kind of explaining to you how to make heaven out of hell. So if you see your world a lot of times as hell, then this is a great book because this will turn it into heaven. And just kind of as a sneak peek, those 4 agreements are to be impeccable with your word. So to always say what you really mean, no matter what. The second agreement is do not take anything personally. So when someone does something to you, know that they are actually doing that to themselves. Don't make assumptions. So only go by what you know, not by what you're assuming of yourself or others. And finally, to always do your best. So no matter what, even if you make a mistake, as long as you did your best, you know that you're doing the best you can. This is a great book for transformation. I really love the book. It spent over a decade on the New York Times bestseller list, and it stayed on that list for so long for a reason. It is a great book. Highly recommended. Now let's move on to number 3. Number 3 on this week's top 5 list is the book Power versus Force. And of course, you may have already heard me speak about this book in my video titled How to Raise Your Vibration Using the Scale of Consciousness. And in that video, I am referring to the scale of consciousness found in the book Power versus Force. As you can see, there's a scale of consciousness. Let's see how close I can get it. But basically, it begins with the emotions and everything at the bottom of the scale, where it's weakness, and then you move on up to power, and all the emotions involved with that. This book is awesome, not only for that scale of consciousness, it is just a great book because it explains in a very scientific way how your body is literally weaker when you are in those lower vibrations, and you are actually stronger in the higher vibrations. And again, it's scientifically proven using kinesiology. Also, the author repeats the idea of the scale of consciousness over and over in many different ways while explaining it, keeping this idea kind of as something that's forming more and more in your mind as you read the book. So by the end, you have a full understanding of how to raise your consciousness by simply just moving out of the weak levels and into the powerful, moving out of force and into power. So I highly recommend this book. It is a great book for anyone who is interested in self-transformation, raising their vibration, and just understanding consciousness at a much deeper level. Because after reading this book, I know, at least for me, I understood just humanity on a much deeper level, and society. So highly recommend that book as well. All right, let's move on to number 4. Number 4 is If You Have to Cry, Go Outside by Kelly Catrone. It says, if you have to cry, go outside, and other things your mom never told you. This is a great book. The reason I love this one, I have read it at least 3 times, cover to cover. But I love this book so much. First of all, it was given to me as a gift by my friend, Katie. I hope she doesn't mind that I said her name. But she gave me this book just knowing that it was something that I might be interested in. And sure enough, I love this book. I have read it so many times. And I also revert back to it once in a while, just in pieces. But basically, Kelly Catrone, you might recognize her from MTV show, a reality show where she's the fashion, she's like the mega bitch in fashion. Well, in this book, it talks about her own personal transformation. And there's nothing better than just loving the way someone tells their story and being able to learn from their life experience and how they transform their life. She also goes into how she had to break down these beliefs in her mind and in her thinking from like her family and her upbringing. She just kind of had to break all that down along her journey and kind of rebuild herself with her own ideas in mind. So it's similar to these other books that I have going on, but it's like from her own perspective and with her own story. So I just really love the book. I love the way she speaks in the book. And I believe that her life experience is very unique. So it was very entertaining to read as well as informative, and it inspires you on your own path for self-transformation. So let's move on to number 5. All right, so number 5 on my top 5 favorite books for self-transformation is The Complaint-Free World by Will Bowen. This one gives a challenge. So this book isn't only asking you to read it to gain understanding just through reading, but to actually take action on what you're learning here. So this book will first describe the harm that you're doing to yourself as you complain, gossip, and criticize, and make that like basically all you talk about to all your family, friends, and coworkers, and actually what it's doing to your own psyche. But then it also explains how to break that pattern in yourself. And he also explains that a lot of people might think that that sounds impossible, but there are many, many actual true life stories in here as well to kind of help you along the way with their own transformations. But the challenge is that you take a bracelet, like the one you see on the cover here. Back years ago when I read this book, you could actually obtain the bracelet at the website a complaintfreeworld.org. So if you go to that website, you may be able to obtain the bracelet. See it here, a complaintfreeworld.org. Otherwise, you could use probably any kind of rubber band or bracelet, but anytime you gossip, complain, or criticize, you're supposed to switch your bracelet from one arm to the other and start over. And by start over, I mean that you're supposed to be trying to refrain from doing those things for 21 days straight. All right, it sounds like a long time, but this is great. If you guys read the book, I highly recommend it. And if you read it, I recommend actually doing it and trying to make it a whole 21 days without moving your bracelet to the other wrist. Because in the process of actually doing, of taking action here, you learn to make this a new lifestyle, a new habit of not complaining, gossiping, or criticizing. And then it actually brings out so much more of you and so much more of what you can do in the world, because you're less worried about others. It discusses the 4 steps that you go through as you are breaking this habit in yourself. So step 1 is unconscious incompetence. So that's where it's you have incompetence about it, at all. So you have to bring awareness to the fact that you are gossiping or criticizing because you don't even realize it. It's unconscious and you're totally incompetent about it. Step 2 is conscious incompetence. So that's when you have put your consciousness into it and you're still doing it, but you recognize when you're doing it now. Okay, so then the more you practice while you're recognizing when it's coming up, then that could lead you to step 3, which is conscious competence, which means that then you are finally refraining from the gossiping, criticizing, and all that. And so once you've worked with level 3, then you're on to level 4, which is unconscious competence, meaning that this is your new way of life. You don't even have to think about it. It is unconscious for you now to not gossip, criticize, or anything. So this book is great. And if you go to thecomplaintfreeworld.org, see if they still have the bracelets available. Otherwise, I just try it at home with, a rubber band or a hair tie around your neck or your wrist. And see if you can make it for 21 days. Well, that is my top 5 list for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope that you might take some of these recommendations and possibly add it to your summer reading list this year. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day. See you soon. Bye.